Hello, everybody. It is Friday, July 19th. This is Kops Office Hours. I am your moderator, facilitator, Justin Santa Barbara. I work at Google. A reminder, this meeting is being recorded and will be put on the internet. I just pasted a link to our agenda into the chat. Please do put your name in there, or we're all putting our name in at the same time. Put your name in there, and also if you have any agenda items, please do pop them on the bottom or the appropriate place in the agenda, and then we can get through them all because we do have a lot of stuff on there already. I'm not sure. Why don't we just get started? The first item on the agenda is around, oh, did I say that please be mindful of our code of conduct and be a good person. The first item on our agenda is about the release status. This is something where I have failed everyone on. I apologize, but I thought we could try something more new, where we basically go through the things, the promotions, the releases that we intend to do, and basically do a roll call on any blockers on them, and then we sort of know what's happening each time. So underneath our agenda, I don't know if I should cast the screen for this, maybe I'll try. Underneath our agenda, I put a list of what I believe the releases are for this, we can figure out what cadence it is, but let's say this, this 2-week period, or ideally today and this weekend. I'm gonna share my screen just so everyone gets it on the video. That looks like the right one. So we do need to do, can everyone see that? Yes, good, thank you. Maybe if I make it a little, well, I think that's okay. If I make it bigger, that might be too big. We will see. It's thinking about it. Anyway, while that thinks about it, there we go. Okay, so we do need to do a kops 1.13 release. I believe we are ready for the .0 release of that. The only thing that I'm aware of is there was a Calico CVE, so Calico and I guess Canal. I think Canal is done though, but I'll write that, Calico and Canal and Calico CVE. So we need to make sure that basically in all the releases that we're gonna do that the Calico CVE is in there. I think, thank you to everyone that sent PRs for that. I think most of them have it, but it's just like, we don't wanna release accidentally without them being in there. I don't know if anyone else knows of any blockers that would block kops 1.13.0, the release. I'm gonna go a little slower on this one because it is a real release. All right, well, if anyone thinks of anything, please do feel free to put them on the list of blockers. Please put your name on if, I'll put my name, but please put your name on just so that we know who it is if I have any questions. Otherwise, the other ones, which I think will be less contentious, when we do the 1.13.0, we then can do the beta of 1.14.0. We can do the alpha of 1.15.0. And we can also do our first alpha of 1.16 because Kubernetes has published their first alpha of 1.16. So we are in our catch-up period. We're going to have 2 concurrent alphas, which is a little weird. And I will probably do, I guess I will release kops 1.16 alpha from the master branch rather than, so we will do, so from release 1.15, if that makes sense to everyone. So we won't, because we have 2 alphas, we're not going to go crazy on the cherry picks. Okay. The AMIs are the next on the list. So, in our channels, we have the default AMIs that we recommend. There are some in the alpha channel that I think fixed a CVE from maybe a month ago. So I'm just going to propose that we put that into the stable channel. I don't know if anyone has any blockers on that. All right. Otherwise, I was just going to do a refresh of the AMIs and put them in the alpha channel. I'm not really aware of any particular reason to do so, other than if we start doing this bi-weekly, we might get into a good hygiene place.
Hey, Justin, how do you feel about the channel update that PR getting merged for the beta for 1.14 before we cut a beta?
The promotion of the images?
No, the channel update PR that I have outstanding.
Oh,
before we cut beta.
Before we cut 114 beta, so you want to cherry pick it back to 114?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's let's put a blocker in there. Ryan, can't remember. I was Ryan. Is there an H in there? Is there an E in there? Is that close? Oh yeah, it's right there for me to read. Sorry, Ryan Bottom. Hash in channels updates. So that will mean that yes, we correctly handle changes. That's a good one to get in. Okay. I'll put that on the others then, because it doesn't make sense to not. So on the AMIs, I think it sounds like we are okay promoting from alpha to stable, which will pick up that CVE. I know some people have been complaining or mentioning that it wasn't there. We'll do an AMI refresh to get another one in the pipeline. And then Kubernetes versions, I guess the simple one is for 112.9, it's currently in the alpha channel. We should promote that to stable because there is now a 112.10, unless anyone knows of any reason, which we should put in the alpha channel. And then I guess in 2 weeks we can talk about promoting that, or whatever cadence we decide. And then we would put 113.8 into 113.8, the latest 113, 114, and 115 into both the alpha and stable channels because they are all pre-release versions. I don't know if anyone has any objections to any of those bumps or know of any problems with any of those versions. Okay. We should also put 116. Same thing for 116. Okay, I don't know if that is handy for people, but I figure if we do that every 2 weeks, then I will know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing in terms of releases. Other people can send PRs. We can use this as sort of the approval process by which we get to a more automated flow, maybe. What do people think? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Ambivalent?
Sounds good.
Okay, all right. We'll see if I can stick to it now. I need everyone's help to stick to it, but let's try this. All right, now let's go into the, so if I will try to do, I will try to do all those today. I think this one I think is going through the pipeline, and I think Ryan, you just need to rebase and we can then get that through the pipeline.
Yep, I just rebased, so it's
perfect.
Jobs are pending now.
Cool. All right, so then we have a large handful of items on the of discussion points. The first one is from Nick or Enzyme. I'm not sure if that's your company or your GitHub handle, but do you want
GitHub handle? Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to?
Sure. Yeah. So I don't know if this is the right venue or so feel free to redirect me to issues or whatever. But I wanted to talk about a quick issue that we ran into, and I was curious if we could either update the docs or if it's just a non-issue and we're doing something wrong. But we followed the upgrade from etcd2 to etcd process that's outlined in the document, the migration document. We're lovingly calling that process the hammer method because it just pretty much hammers all the masters away. And we noticed that when they come back, when the new masters come back, there's like a little reconciliation period in which they go from all the old masters are ready and all the worker nodes are ready, but all the new masters are not ready. And when the new masters become ready, it marks all of the nodes in the cluster, all other nodes in the cluster as not ready. At that point, Kubernetes decides that none of those not ready, or all of those not ready nodes should be removed from any load balancers managed in Kubernetes, which causes a service-wide disruption for every service in the cluster. I didn't know if anybody else had experienced that. And it seemed, when we were testing, it seemed to be more common on larger clusters. So there might be kind of just a race condition in which that loop, that node sync loop happens, which is 100 seconds. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up and see if either we could like document that, be like this process will cause a service, cluster-wide service outage, or ways to mitigate it. We found some ways to mitigate it, but they're super dicey. But I just wanted to bring that up and see if anybody wanted to talk about it or see if we could do something better on our side.
Yeah, I apologize that I think the hammer method is the right name for it. I had not thought of that, but it does make sense that it will happen because, well, I'm not sure why the new nodes don't register as ready. That's a little weird.
Yeah, we were going to dig in to see like why kubelet has like this weird reconciliation where everybody goes not ready, and like why that would be the case. We haven't gotten a chance to dig into it too deeply.
Yeah, that's a little surprising. Once they go not ready, it's not overly surprising they get removed. There is elsewhere a disruption controller that that will, for example, so if your API, if the AWS API tells you don't have any instances, if the AWS API tells you that one instance has gone away, Kubernetes will delete the node. If the AWS API tells you that, I believe more than 2/3, like all of the nodes have gone away, Kubernetes will not blindly delete all your nodes. It doesn't trust the API at that point. I don't think there is a similar behavior for load balancers. Like, it's pretty obviously bad to remove all the nodes, I would say. But I don't know of any guard against that. So it's not great. It makes sense. But yes, I think if we can figure out, if you want to send a doc saying this happens, that's wonderful. If you want to dig in, that's great. I would definitely look at why the nodes go not ready. That seems like or like any way to prevent them going not ready. That does seem like the place to catch it, rather than, because even if we fixed it in the service controller, I don't know how we would get that into like back to 112. So
how large is your cluster? Just curious.
I think the largest one we did it on was probably like 25 nodes, including, or maybe not including 3 masters.
Yeah, we've seen it on as small as, I think, a 16 node cluster that it did this. Smaller clusters, it doesn't do it. If you have maybe a 6-7 node cluster, it doesn't seem to be a problem. But for larger clusters, once the new masters come into play, then all the nodes go not ready for a while. And it's just this kind of cascading issue. The way we've gotten around it so far is to temporarily add an IAM policy to the masters, denying them the ability to remove instances from load balancers. And we just have that policy in place while we are rolling all the masters. And then as soon as they come back up and everything has stabilized, we remove that policy.
That is a good fix. It's not, I mean, obviously it's a little bit like what, but it's actually probably, I would say that's a nice fix, to be honest.
I'm probably going to submit some documentation. Should we add that as a potential workaround?
I think that'd be a wonderful, yes, that is a great suggestion. This kubelet, like these things tend to be rabbit holes where you chase them down and eventually you find something and we might not be able to fix it. Whereas the IAM workaround feels very, very targeted. And I think actually it's a nice tool to have in our arsenal for other things whenever we come across something like that.
Cool. Yeah, we also noticed like endpoints should also be removed with any nodes. So endpoints would be affected with not ready state for nodes as well, but we didn't actually see that being enacted in the cluster. So maybe that's part of that safeguard stuff you were talking about in another controller. Or if there's I don't know. It's interesting though. Interesting.
That is interesting. Yeah, it's possible, but maybe those are done by pods. So maybe the pods didn't go not ready. I don't know. Anyway. Yes, cool. An issue would, or a PR or would be a great way to get that discussion going. And the IAM fix sounds wonderful.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Peter, are you on?
Yeah.
Do you want to take this one away?
Sure. So a couple of weeks ago, all of the PRs were failing their E2E tests, and it was because of Kubernetes change that they no longer allow certain node labels to be applied by the kubelet on its own node, and kops relies on that for tagging the node role. And there were discussions in the enhancements. Pull request is linked there. So I was just curious what what kops' workaround for that is going to be.
Yes. So the underlying thing is there is an attempt to prevent security issues where a kubelet, hypothetical security issues, this is not a known one, if you escape and get permission on a node, you could relabel your kubelet relabel your node as a master or a whatever privileged labels you can find in the cluster, and you could steer workloads to yourself and in theory steal the secrets. Like there's a complicated node admission controller which basically tries to reduce the blast radius of a node by preventing any access from the node to a secret that is not on a pod mounted to that node. But if the node can relabel itself, then that sort of circumvents that, at least very narrowly. I mean, I feel like there's a million ways around that, but anyway, that's what's behind this. So it's acceptable to use a controller to add those same nodes. I do have one in a sort of work in progress branch. It is based on Kube Builder, so it needs like, once we cut the 115 branch, I can put it on because it will be happier on 116. Actually, that's not true. But once we get all the releases done, then I can start that going. I do think in general, we should try to stop relying on those nodes if you're using them as an end user, on those labels if you're using them as an end user. But I do know that people are using them also on the instance groups. So I think if you have uses for the node role label specifically, that enhancement would be helpful, because I think Clayton is thinking that there are no real uses for it, and so if there are, then that would be helpful to share with him, because I think he has a perspective that is, from a different environment than the one that most of us in the Kubernetes community actually have. All right, does that answer what we? Yeah. So our testing right now is, I think, locked to 115, but hopefully we can get that controller in, or figure out that we effectively want, like maybe we should just stop using the labels. I don't think we should, but we could decide to stop using them and deprecate them ourselves. But that feels like most of our manifests rely on those labels, so it is a much harder thing to do.
So the controller will rely on EC2 instance tags for its source of truth?
Yes. So the sequence, good question. The sequence is the node is allowed to set its provider ID, which includes the instance ID. The controller looks up the instance ID in EC2, checks that, like, from there goes to an instance group. From the instance group goes to the set of labels that can be applied. It's actually it's a really nice, like, this is sort of getting similar to the node authorizer controller as well. So it will be much more secure. I think will be is the operative word, because like right now you can probably change your provider ID very easily, and so therefore bypass the whole system. Like that's sort of the like a million ways around it type thing. But I presume that I've asked on one of these issues, Jordan Liggett, who is like really driving a lot of this, like whether there is a plan to protect provider ID and all these sort of things, or recommendations on how to do so. Because once we get that in, that will be a great change. Some sort of like node authorizer handshake integrated with a provider ID. So effectively, in order to escalate in Kubernetes, you must have already escalated at EC2, at the EC2 API. And once you escalate at the EC2 API, you can basically do whatever you want anyway. So,
and that means that all of the other cloud providers that kops supports will need a controller or functionality in this controller in order to work with Kubernetes 116.
That is an excellent point. Yes, it does. Yes. One of the things we can do is, if we do it via cluster API, we might be able to have a workaround. We might be able to have a different mechanism there, maybe. And if we might be able to do it via the node authorizer as well. Like relying on the provider ID is one mechanism, but maybe we could find another mechanism that like securely does something at handshake time. But yeah, it does feel that it's half of a design that has been implemented, and it's a slightly uncomfortable half because we're not having to do a lot of work, and it's not clear what the where the payoff is. I do feel there's a payoff in the end, but it's not necessarily there right now. Shall we move on? I think next is
Yeah, it's me, Marco Fracucci.
Thank you. Hey, Marco.
Yeah, a couple of things. The first one, I was wondering if there's any interest to release etcd manager CTL binaries. If so, I tried to guess how you manage the release of etcd manager, which I think are not, and I've submitted a PR following this strategy. But I just guessed it because I actually don't know how you manage the releases. And the second thing is that a few weeks ago, we moved to etcd manager, and we deeply tested how the backup restore works, and I tried to understand how it works under the hood. Since I didn't find any technical documentation, let's say, so I submitted a PR with the documentation about what I understood works. I would be glad if anyone like you that worked on that may take a look and give any feedback if it's correct, incorrect, in order to improve it and eventually merge it for other people as well that want to better understand how the backup is.
Thank you. I think that's wonderful. I will. What I did was I put the etcd manager CTL. I think I might still be sharing my screen. I am still sharing my screen. I put the etcd manager CTL binaries as a release for this. Let's call it 2 weeks. I'm just going to call it 2 weeks for now, and we'll see if we change our mind for this 2 weeks. And that I put a link to that I will go and look at your PRs. And thank you so much for doing those docs. I will definitely have a look at that, and I'm sure they are correct, but I will take a look anyway.
Okay, I'm not, so please take a look.
Okay. Thank you. I know there are also some other, or I believe there are also some other etcd manager PRs that I will also have a look at the same time. B. Corjan, I do not know if you are here. Let's see.
I don't think he is, but I remember at KubeCon he was talking about this.
Right.
Because he really wants to do container D.
I think we should definitely do container D.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. I don't know if there's a... we don't have any container runtime configuration. Okay. That's a good question. I feel like we can try something. Yeah. That's a good question. I will think about that one. I will comment on that. I don't have a good answer. I don't know if anyone else has a great answer for how we should do it. We probably should... Something in general, I think. We're starting to see, and I don't know if this came up on the agenda. I think there was something else, maybe not. There's a PR that came in, which was a really cool PR about exposing kube scheduler configuration via, or setting this kube scheduler configuration, instead of setting it via flags, using a config file. And so upstream in open source Kubernetes, they are moving a bunch of things to what's called component config, which is these configuration files. And kube scheduler seems to be the first one that is ready, and it's fairly small in scope. And so we tried it, and then I think Rodrigo pointed out that we're currently setting every field, and that's a little weird. And so I asked them, the component config people, and they are amenable to doing something where basically every field is optional, so it's a pointer. If you look at that, that actually maps pretty directly to how we've been doing component configuration. The intent, our component configuration is the running with where component configuration was 3 years ago. And it looks like we have ended up in the same place. So that is great news. We should probably do the same thing, therefore, for containerd. I don't think containerd will have a configuration block, but we should probably imagine that it had a component config and go from there. Or maybe it does have a component config and see if we can do that. I know it actually has a configuration file that is a TOML file, but that does imply a certain structure. So if we try to mirror that structure, I think we will be in good shape. But yeah. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts. All right, Mike, an etcd manager leak.
Yeah, so a few people brought this up to me just through direct messages, that they were like, oh, have you seen these weird spikes in etcd manager? And then I looked at my etcd manager and it was doing the same thing. So one proposal someone said is that it actually might be in gRPC, and gRPC in etcd upstream actually has, they mentioned a fix. So I opened a quick PR for etcd manager, adding an additional version of etcd that has the gRPC fix, but I'm working on seeing if I can test it in one of our clusters.
Okay.
So I just wanted to be on your radar more.
Thank you. Do we have a feeling, and it's etcd specifically, not etcd manager?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, which doesn't mean that it's not something the etcd manager is not necessarily doing the right thing. It's just like, which component it's in. Okay, that makes sense.
We didn't see anything catastrophic with this either. That's why I didn't call it a blocker or anything. But it, the graphs were high enough that I was like, all right, I gotta keep an eye on this.
Okay, cool. All right. Thank you. It looks like we might, yes. Perfect. Yes. Okay, cool. All right. Thank you for drawing my attention to that. And yes, thank you for looking into it as well. Sorry, potential PR, great. Dennis,
yeah. So I made about a month ago, I added this item to the agenda. I wasn't sure if it was actually brought up or not because it wasn't there at the moment. But this is about inconsistency with the config-based option and kops state store. Because right now, if they're different, kops state store ends up for the cluster spec and the rest goes from config base. So I was wondering what would be the best option here in terms of source of truth. Do we take the config base or the kops state store?
The intention is supposed to be that kops state store is how you locate the cluster object.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the instance group objects. And then the config base is for configuration objects that the cluster accesses. And the idea is that kops state store could be a Kubernetes service. Whereas,
okay.
So that's the rule of thumb. But because we don't yet have the CRD functionality, I'm pretty sure, as you point out, that there are lots of inconsistencies. I think if we follow that rule of thumb, that kops state store could be a Kubernetes service and config base should be a storage area that is shared with the instances,
mm-hmm.
then we would be, that's the rule of thumb.
Yeah, so if that is what is actually planned, then I might end up doing a documentation PR just to get a clear that
would be wonderful.
Yeah, because that was one of the points that we discovered when we had the outage back at KubeCon. That was like, they're both buckets, different buckets.
Yes.
So, okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. Peter, you posted a link to this, but when I went to look at it, it is no longer available. I don't know if that's the bug.
No, that was not what I was mentioning, but
okay.
Basically, I was looking at the commit history on the master branch, and all of the merge commits by the KHCI bot are failing their kops post submit job. And it's been that way since, I believe, June 11th. And I'm curious.
It wouldn't surprise me if it's the same label thing, right?
Yeah.
So
maybe
yes,
that's the case.
It's a good question. I will put it on the, I don't want to put it on the list, but yes, I'm reasonably sure that's what it will be. But we can certainly have a look at that. I'm going to bring up test grid and we can see.
I am curious about the usefulness of this post-submit job, given that it's been failing and no one noticed.
I will decline from commenting. How about that? We do have this grid. If I can find it. There we go. Yeah, okay, cool. So we have, yes, all the jobs are currently failing that are running with 116, which makes sense. We sort of know that, and yes, we need to fix that. And it looks like all the jobs that are pinned to a version are okay, except for 113, which apparently is flaky. So we actually should look at that, but it's volume. So yeah, it doesn't look that flaky. Let's see. That's actually pretty good for these tests. Okay, so yes, there's one. It looks like one flaky-ish test. So yes, I am reasonably confident that is probably what is going on there. Should we move on? Yeah. I can't see. Where'd you go? Okay. I'm going to assume you would have said something if not. Is it Jackson?
Thomas. Hi.
Oh, hi.
First time in office hours. I tried to come last time, but I guess everyone else decided to take the 5th of July off.
Sorry.
Hey, no worries. So I had two things I wanted to talk about. So this first one is this hostname override. So the short version is, if you click the issue and scroll all the way to the bottom, I got a nice little table to explain it. But basically, I'm trying to enable the node authorizer on my cluster, and our VPC in AWS has DHCP options, and so you run into this wonderful little problem where kops is making the host name one way and Kubernetes is making it another way, and they don't match, and so it doesn't work. So basically, the proposal here is to replace the way we compute the name to match how Kubernetes is doing it. And so the table there I had in the issue at the bottom is basically, so if you didn't have the DHCP options enabled, it's no change to you, things just work. If you had the DHCP options, it starts working if you were using node authorizer, and if you weren't, it's the same. So, because this will also solve the issue which people may have noticed, like, so for me, on my DHCP option clusters, the host name changes, right? Because kops starts it with the host name override, and so Kubernetes shows it as not ready with whatever the DHCP option is, and then as soon as the cloud whatever controller or integration with AWS works, it renames it back to the private DNS name. So you'll get rid of that weird rename if anyone's using DHCP options on their VPCs.
That's interesting. I wonder if that's what's going on with the ELB thing we talked about earlier. But I'm in favor of the AWS hosting override. I think it makes a ton of sense. I also agree that yes, we should defer there's some duplicated code, and I think we can defer fixing that into a later PR. But yes, this is, as you say, there should be no change for anyone not using DHCP. There is one extra EC2 call, or two metadata calls, one EC2 call, but the EC2 call is the same one that kubelet does, so we know that you have IAM permissions, and it's one call.
I did raise a case through our enterprise support thing to get AWS to add this API call to the metadata thing, but I don't expect that anytime soon because AWS.
That would be nice, but yes, thank you for this PR. I think this is great, and I don't know if there's any blocker on it. Oh, it looks like I need to approve it, or someone needs to approve it.
Okay, so yeah, once this is approved and merged, I'm planning on just backporting it to everything back to 112 probably.
Yeah, do you need it in 112 or can it go into 113?
I need it in 112, but I'm already running a fork because we took too long on all the other PRs. So
sorry about that. Yeah, but the tests were yes. Okay, I mean we can put it into 112 as well. It's I think that's reasonable.
Okay, cool.
Okay, and then you found a concurrent map iteration bug. Take three. So the first one, the fix went in that did a shallow copy, and so my most recent fix that went in like 2 weeks ago actually does a deep copy of the map, but now I'm hitting it again with a completely different call trace. So I'm not sure if anybody is familiar with how this Weaveworks mesh stuff works, because I don't even know where it's getting this message from. I just know it's hitting a concurrent map iteration in this Marshall method, but I have no idea where it got that map or where this record came from or anything. I will have a look at this. All panics are problems, so this is frustrating, and I will try to figure out what's going on.
The good news is, with the last thing where I added that deep copy thing, I went from getting it about every 1 to 2 minutes to getting it like every 15 or 20, so it's significantly better.
That's cool. Yeah, thank you. It's probably just, yes, it's an internal library that's used by Weave. It's not necessarily particularly widely used outside of Weave. And in etcd manager, for example, we used a different one because it has some limit. This one has like some of the surprising stuff, and like it does all sorts of like clever like distributed system stuff. But in the end, we're not using any of it. So
yeah, I kind of figured. So yeah, I started looking into it a little bit, but I figured if someone already had experience with this, it'd probably be a lot faster.
I'll have a look, and we'll probably just do like a defensive copy now that we have a correct deep copy method.
Yeah, well, yeah, and that's one I couldn't figure out where we weren't doing the deep copy, but I don't know exactly what paths it generates these messages from. So.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. We have reached the end of our agenda. I don't know if anyone else has anything else they would like to bring up. It looks like there is a busy 2 weeks of releases ahead of us, or whatever. But yes. But otherwise, yes. Does anyone else have anything else they would like to bring up?
I threw one other
host name override.
Go ahead.
Should we add that host name override PR to the release blockers?
Sure. Is it a 113 blocker? Yes.
Yeah, probably should be.
Okay. So therefore, it's a Yeah.
I added a blocker there on 1.14 beta, Justin, for the etcd manager update to add the listen URL support.
Okay. Oh, is that an issue? Does it have a PR?
There is not a PR yet. I can try to get one open.
Okay. If you have time, that's wonderful. But if not, then okay.
Should we add the node labels as a blocker for 1.16 alpha? If
that is
we don't
an
have
excellent
that.
point. It's not going to work. All right. So yes, that is not going to happen these 2 weeks. All right. Node labels, admission, or node labels controller. Okay. So this probably won't happen. Okay, but I will try. I have the code sitting there, so it's just, yeah, it's a little bit. There's a lot of, like, the big thing is it requires all the supporting libraries to version bump. A lot of people spoke when I asked if there were other issues, so I don't know if we've covered everyone. Are there any other issues people would like to bring up?
If no one else has anything, Justin, I have a PR waiting for you for etcd manager to include etcd manager CTL into the container. I would love to get that in so I can actually migrate to etcd manager.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, we have reached the end of our agenda, and if no one else has any other items, then I will call time. We will do a bunch of releases as agreed, but probably not this 1.16.0 Alpha 1, but we can do the others. And I wish everyone a very happy 2 weeks. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.